This
Um,
conference will now be recorded.
all right. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and begin. We're gonna get right into it. Does anybody need a moment or anything, or are we ready to begin? Good. Okay. All right. So first of all, those of you who will watch this and tune in later, definitely appreciate you taking the time out for this event, Black, Green, and Elected, the Memphis version. This will be a focus in several cities. A series, excuse me, a series focused in several different cities. Memphis being the first, then Baltimore, Maryland, Washington D.C., and also Flint, Michigan. This program is as a part of the our Black History Month program as well, and it's also a part of our general goodwill that we like to do in the community. I first wanted to get started by recognizing our partners, the Shelby County Lead Prevention and Sustainability Board Commission. Excuse me, I always say boards or commission. LPC, Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission, as well as the Black Millennials for Flint. Thank them for being partners in this as we present this, have this conversation about environmental justice. And so, I guess how we'll begin is we'll begin with our speakers, Representative London Lamar and Commissioner Tami Sawyer. I'll introduce myself, and then we'll let these two esteemed speakers introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the conversation. So again, my name is Erik Stevenson. I'm the parliamentarian for the Lead Prevention and Sustainability Commission, as well as at one point in life worked for the Downtown Memphis Commission. Now I work for a developer and in the for-profit sector, uh, but primarily working in those communities that are hit hardest by environmental um, justice issues. So, if you could, Commissioner Sawyer, introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Erik. Hello, everyone. I'm Commissioner Tami Sawyer, Shelby County Commissioner. I represent District 7, North Memphis, Midtown, Binghamton, parts of Frazier. Really excited to be here. I've been doing work with the Lead Prevention Commission since it was formed, and just really excited about what the work that's being done to keep us on our toes and make sure that we're living into what environmental justice looks like for Black people. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm State Representative London Lamar. Very excited to be here with you all. This is a very important issue with me. I've been working with Black Millennials for Flint and the Shelby County Lead Prevention Group in order to push legislation on the state level to further tighten up laws and rules to make sure we can get lead out of our children's drinking water. I serve on the House Criminal Justice Full Committee and the House Full Finance, Ways and Means Committee and Subcommittee Appropriations. So definitely wanting to be an advocate by also seeing how I can help bring funding to initiatives like this as well. So I'm very excited to be here alongside Commissioner Sawyer and yourself, Erik.
Yes, yes. Representative Lamar is definitely an environmental justice advocate, as well as Commissioner Sawyer. So we definitely appreciate you guys, and we're looking forward to the insight. So just kind of a rundown of the agenda. We'll kind of go through the panel discussions for a while, and then we'll have Q&A. If there's anyone that has any questions or that they'd like to submit, and then after that, we'll go to closing remarks and call of action. So we'll hop right into it with the panel questions. So delegates to the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit was held on October 24th to 27th in 1991, which was held in Washington, D.C. And they drafted and adopted 17 principles of environmental justice. Since then, the principles have served as the defining document for the growing grassroots movement for environmental justice. As a Black elected official, how do you apply these principles to your work and your leadership? And why is it important for these principles to govern your work? I'll begin with you, Commissioner Sawyer.
Thank you. And I just wanted to start with my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I apologize for not making that statement in the beginning. But just looking through the 17 principles, there's just a lot here. And first, I just want to name that often we don't realize how in-depth and complex environmental justice is. A lot of people think it can be very one note, just like reproductive justice. London worked in reproductive justice for a while and knows this as well, but it's not just about being green or the water. There's so much mentioned in these 17 principles as I scroll through them. But, you know, I think that as a commissioner, some of the things that are most important to me here is based on the mutual respect for all people. For example, right now we are in the midst of debates about whether or not there should be a pipeline in Shelby County, the Byhalia pipeline. And one thing that I do know is, you know, at first I tried to kind of acquiesce to the commissioners who represented South Memphis. But as more people spoke out, as we received more and more calls to be proactive, listening to people's voices required that I speak up. And so I think that right here, it shows that like principle number 2, public policy should be based on mutual respect and justice. And I ran for office to be a leader of justice. And I think that that's one thing that speaks to me the most. But most importantly, it's about the sacredness, as number 1 states, of Mother Earth. Even right now, we have a foot of snow. We're snowed in. I'm losing my mind because we're pandemic and we're snowed in. And I just feel like the walls are closing in on me. But these are not normal things, and we're not in normal times environmentally. And so it's really time for us in so many ways to get back to the roots of our connection with the earth, heal what we can, and protect what remains.
Well put. Representative Lamar.
Absolutely, that's a great question, and I'm glad that Tami mentioned that. The idea of environmental justice intersects with so many other issues, as you see under your 17 principles. And when I ran for office, I ran under the principles of strong schools, healthy families, and safe communities. And environmental justice intersect with all of those key values and principles I ran on as an elected official. They even talks about how I'm advocating in every single realm of my legislative platform, and environmental justice ties into each of those. When we go back to strong schools, I'm pushing legislation around HB 46, which is tightening up the testing capacity of schools and creating a statewide testing platform developed by the Department of Education and the Department of Health, so that there's a standard of lead testing across the state of Tennessee and not just dependent on the local schools districts to do what they need to do requiring lead testing. Healthy families. Environmental justice goes into how our families' health is impacted, whether from the idea of having safe drinking water and making sure we're drinking lead-free water, to making sure that we have the healthcare coverage for those who are impacted by lead, that they have the necessary services and resources to care for themselves and their family. We can't talk about not tightening up the rules and the conditions of our environment while also not delivering the healthcare services and that people need in order to be able to survive healthy in their own communities. And most importantly, safe communities. Tami mentioned earlier about the Byhalia pipeline. They're trying to build that pipeline in part of my district and part in the neighborhood that my mother and my grandmother grew up in. And so it's impacting my family. And this is poor communities. And so when we talk about socioeconomic dynamics, is that the poor communities are the ones that's oftentimes victimized or preyed upon when it comes to environmentally friendly projects that go into our neighborhoods. Last night or the night before, the Valero gas plant was on fire, and you saw flames from across the city coming from that particular refinery located outside downtown. But what we do know, cancer rates in that neighborhood are extremely high. people who live in that neighborhood are extremely poor, and that though that neighborhood is oftentimes a breeding ground for manufacturing and other environmentally unfriendly operations that go on in our city. So it's not just talking about keep climate change and what the hot topics you see on CNN and what a lot of things that people are championing on a national level, but we can definitely localize the argument around environmentally friendly neighborhoods, communities, schools, and everything else we have to do. So again, those 17 principles stretch across a vast majority of issues we see in poor communities, especially poor Black communities here in Memphis, Tennessee, that's predominantly African American. And so oftentimes the word being environmentally friendly is foreign to the Black community because we're so focused on key issues. But the more we educate our community about how we treat the environment, what's going on in our communities, we can further broaden this conversation and realize it's very intersectional with many other issues we're experiencing as a community.
There, I can already tell this is going to be a great conversation and great discussion because you talk about so many things that hit, socioeconomically challenged communities, primarily those communities of color. And, you talk about the cancer rates that are substantially higher in the areas where these environmental hazards, set up shop. So it's very critical that we understand why we have environmental justice advocates on our behalf and not just, dismiss it. But I won't get into my personal. I'll try to stay on topic because I get very passionate about this. So bringing it back and in the same vein as well. Of course, we all know that Memphis is known for its great water. It's it's the best water ever. I was recently in Florida, and it was different. You can tell that the water is just not the same. It's just nothing against Florida water. I'm just saying the taste of Memphis water is just better. But unfortunately, MLG&W reported that approximately 15,000 lead service pipelines in Shelby County have issues. So how can this issue be prioritized and adequately addressed? And I'll go to you first, Representative Lamar.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think there are so many different ways that we can address this, and it requires intergovernmental relations, being able to have strong relationships with the federal government, with the state government, and with the local government in order to make sure we can do this in a smooth continuum where everybody's on the same page about how we improve our environment. So one of the things we can do is, one, let our local elected officials, from the county commission to the city council to the state level to our congressmen, know how we feel about environmentally unfriendly development and projects going on in our neighborhood, or ways that we can stop those things from coming. That's one way, so that we can make sure our leadership is on the same page with the community about the decision making they have and the impact it has on our environment, i.e. how we're connecting with our local elected officials on the commission and the city council about this Byhalia pipeline. Secondly, we got individuals like myself on the state level who can push legislation that can put in accountability measures and standards that people have to follow on the local level to ensure there's more accountability on how we deal with environmentally unfriendly issues in our community as well. For example, making sure there's lead testing statewide so that everybody is on the same page. And most importantly, also tightening up our federal laws and legislation in order to make sure that all folks, including those in Tennessee, around the country, are also on the same page about lead testing. I know Black Millennials for Flint engage in a way that's on the national, state, and local level about these issues. Secondly, funding is the biggest thing. One of the biggest pushback I'm getting on my bill about lead is the fact that it's an unfunded mandate. We're putting in requirements for local officials to follow without providing funding. Yes, that is an issue. We do need to provide funding, which is why I'm so privileged to be on Finance, Ways, and Means, to find out where the money resides and how it moves and how can we secure funding in order to ensure that projects are funded and in a way that we can continue to push on environmentally friendly ways of protecting our community. And then on the federal level, holding the EPA accountable. Just now on December 22nd, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency finally finalized a major update to their lead and copper rule in the last 30 years. And this rule is going to require that LEAs test at least 20% of their schools each year, with testing all of their schools within a 5-year gap, even though my bill tightens this up to make sure that there's testing every other year. And so again, everybody, no matter what level of government you're sitting on, has some sort of obligation to make sure we're strengthening and putting more accountability measures in place to prevent the spread of lead and other environmentally unfriendly development projects and projects in communities, especially communities of color who are also socioeconomically disadvantaged.
Yes, indeed. Where the money resides. Commissioner Sawyer?
I think Representative Lamar gave a really robust answer, and I'll just add a little bit on the local side. I think that one of the things is realizing that we can't just all be on MLGW. Definitely putting the right pressure points on MLGW to do more. But 15,000 lead pipes is also the responsibility of the city and the county. So London mentioned funding, right? So what is the city of Memphis and the municipalities doing to make this a priority to ensure that these pipes are replaced or repaired, so that people are getting their water delivered in the cleanest way, healthiest way possible? What is the county government? And so as a commissioner, that's one thing for me to look at. We have the LPC, but we give very little funding to these issues and making sure that when our terms are over as a county commission group with our current mayor, that one of the things we'll leave behind is 10% less lead pipes or something like that. So I think that what's important at the local level is that we reinforce that this needs to be a priority for MLGW, but also for our local elected bodies as well. And that the only way that we're going to, one, reduce this number of lead access points and pipes, as well as keep the number from growing, is if the locally elected bodies join the provider MLGW in the efforts to repair.
Agreed. I think you both describe a method or a framework to develop strategies to really, both at the state and local level, approach these lead-based issues, or this particular issue, from a way that has teeth. I think that's critically important. That it just not be something that is talked about, but it actually has some impact and teeth to it. Again, I'm trying not to get too far into these things because we've got an agenda or set out. But let's move forward a little bit. The Biden-Harris administration has made some really big promises to Americans regarding climate change. They've campaigned on it. That was the thing that they've really wanted to make sure that every American voting for their ticket knew that it was something that was important to them. So the question becomes is, what impact do you see this having on a national level, prioritizing these things at a state level? State and local level for both of you.
Well, I'll go ahead and answer, then I'll pass it off to Commissioner Sawyer. For me, having Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris in office means that we're going to have more focus and seriousness around the conversation around climate change. There's going to be more funding allocated towards climate change. In addition to having, in my opinion, a Democratic president and VP with now a Democratic Congress and Senate, we now can see legislation pass through quicker with less barriers that are going to be more environmentally friendly and help combat the issues of climate change. But I do also want to say this: not only should we continue to hold them accountable to the campaign promises that they made around climate change, but we also need to further educate the community on what climate change really is. Climate change is just a word. People think about it's getting hot, the weather, sun, just basic general understanding of what climate change. But what we got to do is take personal responsibility as advocates and state and local elected officials to further the conversation of what climate change is, explain it to the community in layman terms where they really understand the direct impact it has on their lives, and continue to advocate from there and make that a part of our platform as state and local officials versus relying on President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris and the national team to further that argument. That is not just a federal issue, is reducing climate change. Those are things that we can do here in Memphis, in the state of Tennessee, when it comes to making sure we protect the environment. And that means passing legislation that's going to put accountability measures on manufacturing and other businesses who conduct business that can be damaging to the environment, making sure there are barriers in place, and making sure when the people say that they all want these things in their community, we don't scapegoat what they're asking for. We actually listen to them and do it. For example, the Byhalia pipeline. You see the whole neighborhood and the city are rallying against this pipeline coming through the community, but yet there still talks about eminent domain to take people's land from them and then give it to these companies. That is a problem. And so what we got to do is hold Biden and Harris accountable, not only to pushing legislation and funding, but also stopping those who want to scapegoat the community and what they need and what they're saying is best for them, and put more accountability measures in place to stop those from taking advantage of low-income communities and communities of color.
You know, I think the first thing that the Biden-Harris administration brings us is sanity and the ability to have a conversation, right? So we're all grateful for this. Just even the ability to rejoin, the Paris Accords and WHO, two things that these are not just agreements, but they provide us with resources and leadership and research that we can apply to what's happening here in our country. Ted Cruz tried to knock the Paris Accords and said, I'm more interested in what's happening in Indiana than I am in Paris, like speaking to this like it's some lofty idea, when really the Paris agreements are agreements that impact, every little town and every city and every state and every country. And to London's point about educating people, that's where we get caught up, right? Climate change isn't important because, I'm worried about, are my kids going to eat? Are my kids getting, to school safely? Are they getting educated at school? And so one thing that I hope that the Harris-Biden administration does is this education proponent. I think the other thing that their agreement to be progressive on environmental issues means is that we are now able, as we have not been able to do for the last 4 years, to participate in conversations to get funding applied, to these issues and have focus on real issues in ways that we've not been able to do in the last administration. So there are some things that to some people, again, might seem like just really nominal steps, but that are just signs that in the next 4 years, at least, we will be able to make some progress and put some teeth. And Representative Lamar made a great point that we have to, we still got to keep our feet on the neck of Biden Harris, and in a good way, right? So I think, though, the fact that they're even willing to engage with the people who know more, right? With the Black Millennials for Flint, with the Young Black and Greens, with all of these organizations that, might have been iced out previously. And again, to put, I think the biggest takeaway people are going to get from this tonight is money. we can talk until we're blue in the face, but if we're not willing to put money and policy behind preparing our country for a better environmental future, our world for a better environmental future, it's all just lip service. You know, you see former Vice President Al Gore speaking out today and yesterday, that's focusing directly on Tennessee, directly on Memphis. Today's tweet, he said, Memphis and Tennessee, we cannot have the Byhalia pipeline. We are already, our political climate has changed just like almost overnight, you know, just like they
Yes.
say Mother Nature heals itself, the government is healing itself. And so you got, you know, you've got Vice President Gore speaking out about such a localized issue. And to me, that gives me hope about what the political future looks like and the way we'll be able to engage on environmental issues under the Biden-Harris administration.
Yes. We definitely see if the effects of climate change and the issues, environmental issues. But so let's get into the Byhalia pipeline. It's been mentioned several times tonight. Of course, we know about the experiences with Native Americans battling the damage of the Dakota pipeline. We're aware of that. But so specifically, what should Memphians be thinking about as the decision with moving forward with the pipeline become more front and center? And also, what specifically should elected officials be deliberating about? You've touched on it some, but Representative Lamar, if you could expound a bit more.
I will say we can do more and this is regarding a pipeline, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, that's what I thought. So I've been to countless rallies out in that community. I've talked to the people in the community. I'm following them. I sent letters to the commission. Hopefully Commissioner Sawyer got my letter as well. So I am big on grassroots organizing and citizen lobbying. That is how I entered the game. The commissioner and I both entered the game in the education advocacy space, grassroots organizing. And I'm really big because I truly believe that's the way to get policy power. And so what you see is Memphians Against the Pipeline group is on Facebook. They're very active. They continue to march. They've held rallies. They've contacted elected officials. They've held press conferences. They've really put the pressure on where now this went from an issue that was only going on to the community that lobbyists tried to sneak in on me last year to now it's the hottest topic in the city around what we can do. And so in order for us to combat this issue and do something, I want to continue to encourage the community to exercise their political power, to be able to continue to engage with elected officials like us, demand that we speak out or take a policy position, and continue to rally, get more folks involved, and most importantly, vote. Again, I want to also wrap that into this conversation about the intersectionality about environmental justice. It goes beyond also speaking out about it, but we have to exercise our power by putting leaders in office who are going to protect our community. And you do that by making sure you're exercising your vote and also protecting the right to vote, because protecting the right to vote and allowing people to do that efficiently and effectively is how we get more accountability and laws and leaders in place to protect us.
That's very specific. Thank you.
I mean, I 100% agree that here's what's pushing this issue, and it is the people on the ground. And I remember meeting with I think it's MABP, Memphians Against Byhalia Pipeline. I don't remember the acronym. I apologize right now. But y'all are doing great work. But you know, when I met with them, I was like, look, y'all, you know, every time I cross over Union Avenue, somebody want to remind me your money resides in the north. And so
Where the money resides.
and so I try, you know, to like let the commissioners over there and the representatives over there do what they do. But this was just too important. And the way they lobbied me was, you know, this is all our water at the end of the day. This is, and what they're going to do over there. I mean, we were fighting landfills in the north, you know, so it just because, and you know, we've got not AutoZone, what is it? Firestone. We don't, God knows what they're going to do with that, you know, and so what elected officials need to do is listen to the people. I've met with the Mahalia Pipeline, and they only called me after I spoke out on behalf of the organizers, right? And so, you know, the clamoring, the community is loud. And I tell people all the time, you know, this is Black Millennials for Flint, so I'm keeping 100. White folks stay in my inbox. Stay in my inbox about what they mad about. They don't want no gas stations in Collierville. They want their kids in school. They want their restaurants open. And I probably get 100 emails a day for each of those issues when they're hot. When it's us, we don't reach out. We just assume that our elected people who look like us are going to do the thing that we think they should do. We're not, if we don't hear from you. You know, and that's unfortunate. And by we, I mean majority. You know, you would think because we have the majority in the city representation, that would be it, but it's not going to be. So I would just implore elected officials to listen to the number of people who are speaking out about this. You know, it's not just about re-educating folks. You can't re-educate people when their safety is on the line. And so if this is not the right time, it's not the right time. And the Valero flare-up tells us that this is very risky.
I could not agree more, Commissioner Sawyer. I think you have to listen to the people. You have to understand and know what their, you know, what their interests are. But, you know, at the same time, the people have to communicate with you. They have to tell you, you know, what's pressing. And yeah, I've heard from several representatives that, you know, sometimes, again, being 100, you know, sometimes, you know, the Black community doesn't reach out to their representatives as much, and they need to, you know, not just think, oh, they understand, they know we look alike. No, you need to express explicitly what it is you want to see happen or what you don't want to have happen. So I definitely, I could not agree more with that. I think you guys pretty much know that how I feel at this point. So we're going to move to something that's, you know, I guess the namesake of Black Millennials for Flint. This particular, I guess, topic or question is dear to me because I grew up in Flint. While I'm a Memphian, been here since I was 8, my formative years were spent in Flint, Michigan, and which is what leads and directs everything that I do every day, because I think it's so important. But so we know how heinous of a man-made incident that was, and it's clear it's environmental racism, and that's not a question. But under your leadership, excuse me, what measures have you taken to prevent Memphis and Shelby County from becoming the next Flint? And again, this is something this speaks directly to me because I've seen it, I've witnessed it. I still have family members that are dealing with the backlash and the issues associated with that. Again, man-made environmental disaster. So specifically, what leadership measures have you taken to make sure that Memphis and Shelby County won't be the next Flint, Michigan?
Did you want to go first, Commissioner? Okay. I'll be quick and pass it off to my colleague, Commissioner Sawyer. For me, again, just to reiterate, I'm working with Black Millennials for Flint and the Shelby County Lead Prevention Council here to push House Bill 46, which is my particular bill to make sure that the Department of Education, in consultation with the Department of Health, creates a lead testing program for all school districts to use across the state of Tennessee. And so this will require not only for testing of traditional public schools, but this bill will now loop in charter schools and child care centers that are certified under the Department of Education. So we're broadening the scope of those who qualify to do lead testing. We're also requiring that we notify parents within 24 hours that there was a lead source in the school. And then they also have 24 hours to cut off that source and remove that source, and notify not only parents, but the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Department of Health, and the Department of Education in this process. And so this is requiring testing, making sure there's under 15 ppb per 250 milliliters of testing. And so what this is doing is making sure the whole state of Tennessee is on the same page when it comes to lead testing, and there's uniform accountability across the state. Again, the EP tightened up the standards in the lead and copper rule in December of 2020, but we're further tighten up the rule with this piece of legislation. It passed the House unanimously last year, but it got stopped in the Senate because of the COVID. I'm hoping I can get this bill passed. Unfortunately, Shelby County Schools is not supportive of this bill because they feel like they won't be able to meet all of these requirements in the time that is expressed. However, I do want to challenge them that we can't slow foot this process. If lead is in our children's drinking water, we got to act expeditiously in making sure we're removing those lead water sources. On top of the intersectionality of different pieces of legislation I'm dealing with maternal health as well, that plays an impact on our environment, knowing that Black women in Tennessee are 3 times more likely to die from childbirth than any other race of women. And a lot of that goes into the unhealthy conditions we are living in, especially pregnant women have to live in. So again, hitting those different topics of why being environmentally friendly and environmentally conscious will put us in a further position to thrive statewide and in all aspects of life, just beyond the climate change argument.
Commissioner
So
Sawyer.
here on the Shelby County Commission, I think one thing that I've done is definitely supported the LPC, the Lead Prevention Council. Anytime Tracy Adams asks me for something, I'm sending an email. And so, just using that networking ability to make sure we get the answers we need from MLGW and the school, and that LPC is able to present to the commissioners. One thing that I'm looking to do moving forward is we just recently got a list of recommendations. Chairman Eddie Jones and I plan to look at those recommendations to see where they fit within this next, the remainder of this year and potentially our final year of this term. And previous to that, we passed a resolution to what was supposed to be expedited, but about testing for lead in Shelby County schools. And so, that's happening not as quickly as one would have thought after we passed it. Like London shared, COVID has definitely slowed things down a lot. But, there's so much more. Even listening to London, I don't know the parts per whole ratio. I think that there's so much more like proactively that we could do as a body. And I'll just be honest about that.
Yeah, of course, there's naturally so much to do, but honestly, listening to it, I do, again, as a kid that grew up in that environment, I appreciate living in this environment now, having children and knowing that there's advocates out there making sure that my children's who are Shelby County students, Shelby County school students, that their drinking water is safe. And there are 2 little Black girls making sure that their, health is at the forefront. Again, just being 100, it's good to know and have representatives and commissioners and advocates in that regard. So if nobody else says thank you, I'll say thank you. Really do appreciate that in advance. So shifting up a gear a little bit. So what are the coolest things involving environmental justice that you've done? Like what's the things that you feel like are just promising and cool for the future? What are the coolest things you've seen? And what do you envision doing long term? We'll start with you, Commissioner Sawyer. Oh.
So I think one of the coolest things has definitely, sorry, that's another Zoom playing in the background. But I think one of the coolest things that I have probably been able to do is to get educated on these issues and learn more. I would definitely say that participating in Black Millennial for Flint with events in DC during Congressional Black Caucus, really learned a lot there. But I think one thing that I would definitely be looking forward to do is, you know, as we're moving back into schools, is looking at how we can, not just with the lead as chair of the education committee, not just with the lead, but, you know, doing an evaluation of what overall environmentally is our kids are risking. One of the conversations about return to schools with COVID has been the ventilation in a lot of our older school buildings. And so when we think about that related to an environmental issue, COVID is not the first airborne disease, it's just been the worst, right? So you've got flu, you've got chickenpox, you've got measles. And so if we've got these buildings that, you know, think about childhood obesity and asthma, right? So especially with the asthma, I think Shelby County has one of the fastest raising rates of childhood asthma. And, you know, so if you look at some of those things and just thinking about, like, you know, for someone like us on this call, we can just go get a purifier and plop it in the hall and keep going about our business, but the majority of our kids are impoverished. And so one of the things that I really would like to do is, as we move back into schools, as we try to get past COVID-19 eventually, is to then think about what an environmental plan looks like for all of our schools and for our children.
I say for me, the best part and the most exciting part that I've engaged in was actually passing a piece of legislation on behalf of Black Millennials for Flint. And no matter what happens, it was the fact that, you know, last session, I was the youngest elected official in the General Assembly in that session. And being able to actually unanimously pass a piece of legislation to improve the lead drinking waters in my school just made me excited about the work that I was doing. It made me excited and privileged that I was able to work with Black Millennials for Flint to pass a piece of legislation around reducing lead water, and it brought to the table the importance, the extreme importance of electing people to office who understand the importance of the work that we are doing. And it goes back to intersectionality of being environmentally friendly and advocating for your environment, is making sure you go to the polls to vote. And those people in my community who are being impacted by the Byhalia pipeline trying to come through their neighborhood are the people who elect me in office. And I'm able to go back to them and say, hey, I've been able to pass this piece of legislation. Hey, I sent a letter to the county commission asking them to support preventing this moratorium for excluding 38109. I've been able to go to the rallies and engage with you and see the importance of my role and the overall role in protecting my community. I can't do everything. I am an elected official. That's it, and that's my lane, and I stay in that lane. But I'm happy I'm able to use my power to get things done, and being able to do that last year and further being able to do that now. And this week we were supposed to present the bill today actually in committee, but session and everything is canceled because of the weather. But just being able to stand in front of those committees and talk with legislators about this legislation is one of the greatest honors of my life. And I'm very fortunate enough to partner with Shelby County Lead Prevention and Black Millennials for Flint to do that.
Well, I hear your passion, Representative Lamar, and as well as you, Commissioner Sawyer. And I always appreciate, and I've watched over the years, you know, you guys kind of stand up for issues and things that are really, you know, you take the punches, and I appreciate that. And for me, knowing your heart and knowing where your stance is, that's some of the coolest stuff to watch. To know, I really see you guys as gladiators in the ring, really making things happen on our behalf. Because oftentimes, no one's paying attention to those issues. So I just had to interject and tell you I thank you, and I think that's cool as well. So last question before we wrap up. And you guys have provided a great bit of advice. But if you can encapsulate, if you will, a piece of advice that you give constituents and to maintain the fight in environmental justice.
I guess for me, my piece of advice is, it gets difficult sometimes trying to keep up with everything. I'm one person, have a limited staff. And so it's important that you continue to engage with me and let me know when things are going on in your neighborhood that you consider that can be damaging to your environment. I do what I can to be ahead of the game and keep track of what's going on, but also making sure you constantly engage with your elected officials and leaders about what's going on in your community and communicate to us how we can help serve you or mitigate these problems or fix them. That is the best way. So again, continue to engage with your neighbors on the level, on the ground, and your community members know what's going on, but also keep a strong relationship with us. And I know myself and Commissioner Sawyer, we are very active on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all of these platforms, plus our government emails. So you have a multitude of ways to get to us and communicate with us about what's going on in your community. So I say, just keep talking and keep letting me know, and we go keep having your back.
100% agree here is that I think often now being elected and on the other side of activism, I realize how often I was like, why don't you see what's going on? And, we try, especially those of us who are engaged in this way, like Representative Lamar and myself. And so I would just say, one thing I would just say is keep engaging us. Don't assume that we know, or don't assume that silence is necessarily not being involved in all issues, right? So give us the benefit of the doubt. I think that's my selfish thing. But I think on the other side, it is organize, organize, organize. As I said, when I have watched for 2.5 years, communities with wealth, communities that are white, organize around things that would make your head hurt and get what they want. We need to organize because at this point we are organizing for our lives. And then the last thing I would say is educate yourself and educate others. As I think we've both shared, this world of environmental justice is huge. Even these 17 points, they cover so much from Native rights, to reproductive health. And so just knowing what the issues are, and being able to expand that in your conversations. So like Representative Lamar said earlier, people hear climate change and they just think it's like granola, right? Oh, there you go, drinking oat milk. It's not just that. It's so, so much more. And for some reason, environmental issues have been identified as white issues, paper bags and recycling, and it's like they're not white issues, they're issues that impact our community as well, and they're not lofty issues. This is literally about the air we breathe and the water we drink. When the snow melts, what does it release? What's the snow going to release when it melts? And so I just want us to think about how we, as people who are invested in this conversation, take this conversation to the people who are not privileged to have the time or liberty to engage in the way we can, and make it a more accessible conversation so that it can be a more accessible issue to Black people.
Well, well put. And the thing that I take away from all of it is what you said, Commissioner Sawyer, is we are organizing for our lives. If that ain't the truth, I don't know what is. In these environmental issues, very well stated. Both Commissioner Sawyer, Representative Lamar, we sincerely, everybody here, appreciate your time. I appreciate you guys just, letting us in and letting us understand, what you're fighting for and how you're advocating on our behalf. I can't say enough. Before we wrap up, I will encourage the people here, and I know this will be kind of recast or rebroadcast. I don't know what you say in the 2021 world. We're going to encourage everyone to subscribe to the LPC newsletter. Please do that. I encourage you to, email Commissioner Sawyer, email Representative Lamar about whatever environmental issues you might have, whatever concerns you might have. Latricia Adams, email her, email me, contact us. Also, please support House Bill 46. Please. Representative Lamar has been fighting and advocating for it so heavily, and we want to make sure that it gets there. Again, we are, like Commissioner Sawyer said, we're organizing for our lives, and that's a part of it. The water that we drink is the water that our children drink is critical. Is also very important. So I know that we've come to the end of it. I could talk about this for hours because it's so important. And also, one last thing, please advocate for your commissioners to add environmental justice issues such as the Byhalia pipeline issues to your community enhancement budgets, because that is a thing. So again, ask your representative or commissioners to add environmental justice components to their community enhancement budgets. They're there. So, but thank you again. I cannot say thank you enough. Thank you to the Shelby County Lead Prevention Commission, and then also the Black Millennials Flint. Thank you all for tuning in, and Representative Lamar, Commissioner Sawyer, please have a great night, and let me know if I have to be of assistance to you. Goodbye.